Welcome back to the Torque Test channel, and boy did we bring the sauce for you today. A while back, Hikoki came out with what looked to be a very spicy 3/4 inch impact indeed, and I mean, I couldn't read any of this, but I do speak torque in 1400 and 2100 Newton meters. That's not messing around, so been waiting for this 36 volt 3/4 inch impact to come out here in the States in Metabo HPT as they do, and when it dropped, we saw not only that 3/4 inch, but also a second generation brushless 1/2 inch high torque too, with even more outlandish torque claims from a brand who we've tested in the past and found to play it pretty straight with the ratings. This Gen 2 surprise 1/2 inch version WR36DG of the same tool is hitting us with quite the upgrade from that past model despite looking very similar, hitting us with 1033 foot-pounds tightening and 1475 nut busting, which sounds awfully like the 1500 foot-pound Gen 3 2967 Milwaukee, but having a click to buy button that we can purchase before that Milwaukee just without all the red carpet rolled out for it. Maybe dropping here today and stealing all that thunder from the red brand before it even shows up. Let's find out today by comparing the current Milwaukee high torque in 1/2 inch and 3/4 as well as what these specs compare closest to in the market now, that monster DeWalt DCF 900. Because we want to see it. In borrowing a page from that DeWalt brand who updated their near decade in service now DCF 899 with an almost identical new DCF 900, which makes little sense given the massive power difference between the two. Metabo HPT, Hikoki, whatever you want to call them, where you're from, they're playing a similar game here. The amount of times in the process of testing, making this video, editing, I brought up info for the wrong impact wrench because their names are the same, their model numbers are one letter off, and look near identical. I can't even tell you how many times I did that. If the specs difference between these two is true, the new Gen 2 is the ultimate sleeper impact wrench on the market. This is how I identify them now. The old one, the WR36DB model in the 1/2 inches case, that one has this rubber pointer arrow looking like design on the side, then a mostly round aluminum hammer case. The new model, the WR36DG, has the rubber pointer arrow thing here, and also the aluminum hammer case has that pointer triangle swoosh looking thing. Quick rule of thumb, if the front case doesn't swoosh, you ain't gonna sploosh. That's because we're talking 770 tightening and 1218 nut busting to 1033 and 1475. Quite an upgrade, and they ain't done. On the 3/4 inch, that somehow gets upgraded from 1033 tightening to 1401 just by going from 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch drive and 1770 foot-pounds nut busting. First of all, what? Second of all, I know we're throwing around a lot of numbers here, but the original Hikoki figures from the website convert to 1032 and 1550 foot-pounds. What happened in that container over here to the States? Did they get bit by a radioactive spider or something? All to the tune of $299 for the 3/4 inch and the same $279 for the 1/2 inch as the last one, which would make these the steal of the century compared to other aging or just much more expensive models. Let's find out by using their 36 volt battery packs in both what compares to a 5 amp hour and what compares to an 8 amp hour. The 5 amp hour being what we test most of these tools with. Up first is the 1/2 inch impact because we want to see what it does versus the red team it's threatening to overshadow with its release, along with the reigning champ DeWalt and the previous Metabo HPT high torque on screen here in black. So yeah, in case you didn't know, the Gen 1 already matches pretty close to the Milwaukee despite its lower specs in this test. Here's the Gen 2 Metabo HPT in green in our 5-second working torque test. $584 foot-pounds. Can't say I'm blown away by that. Not that it's bad, but let's not forget HPT is talking about a 30% increase in performance from the Gen 1 to Gen 2. Did they just wise up and start following market trends that other brands are doing at the top? This tool also seems very sized for a larger battery, and yet this, already with just a 2.5 amp hour / 5 amp hour comparable pack, is 8.6 pounds, a full 1 pound heavier than the Milwaukee, and you do feel it. Let's hope it brings its A game in reverse, which is where we'd prefer impacts to shine given the choice anyways. This is our industry standard 10-second max torque test, median of 3 tests on screen as usual. And as you can see here, the Gen 1 begins to fall behind a bit. So there's some room for improvement to not only be considered a modern high torque good option, but to pass up some of the competition here. Let's see it. "770 foot-pounds, now that's what I'm talking about. I know it may seem like a small difference on screen here, but these are hard-fought numbers on this channel. The only tools to ever make it into the thousands here look like this, or this. 770 in a max torque test puts this in the top like 3 impacts sold today. Nice. One thing that comes along with that power on this tool is some serious effort to keep it planted on a bolt that's giving it any trouble. HPT impacts have always looked very Makita-like in design, and this one very much reminds us of the LXT high torque in that it wants to jump off the bolt head, pushing back at you, and in this case bringing with it a lot of noticeable arm twisting rotation you'll be needing to stop. This one is tied with the Snap-on CT9080, in our opinion, that big dog impact, just below the Makita LXT with a 8.5 out of 10 in our wrist-breaking scoreboard. The DeWalt falls just under this, but brings with it other chattery sort of socket sticking type behavior that isn't really wrist-breaking types of stuff. But this Metabo HPT is just as easily socket destroying if you're not careful, as it'll push off a big bolt, rounding things a bit, assuming it doesn't instantly loosen what you're pointing it at. One last test, our best case scenario run, 15 seconds, its best result. Here's it taking on the DeWalt in reverse again. $829, very much in the same conversation as that DeWalt here, meaning it's also very much one of the top high torques for sale today, and when paired with a 4/8 amp hour battery comparable, I mean, they don't sell this impact as a kit, I don't think, and if they did, it likely would come with something looking like this size on the tool, and that's what this looks like in performance. $840. So in this configuration, yeah, it's up there. Of course, that DeWalt has other battery options too, lots of them, lots of really good ones. And really, it made its best numbers in forward, which we allow for. So even just putting a 6 or 8 amp hour battery on it in reverse, like we're showing here, or running that same 5 amp hour XR battery in forward, it makes about these numbers, representing still quite a gap for this tool and for Milwaukee to close up to and compare that DeWalt or even beat out this new HPT. Let's rank this thing, then move on to 3/4 inch where they are supposed to be on even the next level above this. Starting below the Gen 1 here, its standard testing runs are turned into 58, 77, and 83. That 58 holding it back a bit here compared to those at the top. As a function of its length and the best numbers that it was able to make, that's 96.6 foot-pounds per inch. Not short, but also a hair under that DeWalt. 1,033 foot-pounds of tightening, now that was a big surprise. But it seems clear to us from what we can tell, one main upgrade to this tool is aligning it with competitive marketing to match their competition. Still 81% here. $279, that's still cheaper than most of the new high torque offerings these days. 45.2 points as a function of performance and price. Quite good. That totals 440.8, placing it right around here next to a $464 Snap-on, and among cordless high torques for sale in the top 4 in the world. That's good stuff. But still eclipsed by, according to the brand, the 3/4 inch WR36DF here that we were lusting after as soon as we saw it drop in Japan under Hikoki. Well, it's finally here, and it's only $299, which is what an M18 3/4 inch cost when we first tested one, but now those are at least $350, along with the Makita LXT 18 volt that's also $350, despite being a decade-old design. $299 sounds pretty reasonable for a 3/4 inch cordless, especially with specs like 1401 and 1770 foot-pounds nut busting. Sheesh, somehow changing the anvil, which is from what we can tell the main difference on this thing, takes it from 1033 up to 1401 tightening. Unless it's got something else going on under the hood, let's find out on the dyno by comparing this tool to the Gen 2 1/2 inch, the Milwaukee 3/4 inch, and the reigning champ 40 volt XGT 3/4 inch Makita. That's around $400 to $450, but is an animal. And spoiler alert, working torque is not all that flashy. Again, something about these updated HPT tools, they both take a second to get out of the hole and get going and don't favor forward all that much, so a small improvement in this short working torque test here. Here's the max torque in reverse where they get down. $812 foot-pounds, beating out every 3/4 inch cordless we've tested, except for the XGT, and not as close to that one as its specs would imply. One last shot to see what it can do. Here it is. $900 foot-pounds, nice, beating the M18 3/4 inch for good, putting more foot-pounds on the 1/2 inch than we expected, just from looking at the anvil change, and hitting a nice milestone too. Not too many tools are in the 900s. The larger square drive also lessened the arm torquing and almost eliminates that push-back hopping that the 1/2 inch does, which we often find to be the case by increasing drive size. That gets a welcome downgrade from 8.5 to a 7 out of 10 on the wrist breaking score. Pretty happy with this one. You may be wondering, how does a beast like this do with an 8 amp hour comparable 21700 cell battery then? And it kind of looks more naturally fitting on this tool as well. Well, yeah, that made less. Only 3 runs for each setup, and the data points to them being about the same or within 5 to 8 foot-pounds, no real improvement. That's just how it goes sometimes. A bigger battery doesn't make everything better. Maybe a similar XGT 2.5 amp hour versus 4 amp hour situation thing going on over at Metabo HPT. They do borrow a lot of other similarities after all. Let's see what the rank chart thinks of this thing. These results here make for 59, 81, and 90. Very similar, all of these tools making in forward in a 5-second working torque run. Sort of fascinating actually. Maybe you don't want to ruin large soft lag bolts that these drive. 8.5 inches long, about normal here, 103.5, that's massively high. So is this 1401 claim. Like, guys, I know you were maybe underrating before, but this seems like an overcorrection, topping the XGT's tightening claim, yet 65% here. At $299, maybe that's forgivable. 45.2 points here, a record unless you include that Alibaba example. And that totals 443.7, placing it in second place in cordless 3/4 inch impacts, a well-deserved spot, and probably these two tools, I think these would get overlooked by most people not familiar with this brand. Well, for 2 reasons. One, they look like the old ones, making things harder than they need to be for the average Joe just to see that this is new at all. But also, I think a lot of people might underestimate how spicy these two HPT high torques are unless channels like us really gave them the beans to see what they could do. And I have a feeling the US arm of Hikoki, Metabo HPT, probably had similar thoughts and bought a new torque calculator to, let's say, update their marketing strategies to make them more competitively compared to top brands. Which, hey, anyone buying one of these likely won't be disappointed when it comes to performance. And the week that they come out available on Amazon, not bad. That's my feeling, and it simply means that maybe from now on you need to watch a test here and there on HPT tools before buying them, which sure keeps us in business. Always a silver lining. We make testing videos like those every Friday. Click a button if you want to be shown those. Thanks for watching.